Recently on this channel, I discussed my testimony and went pretty in depth about my experience growing up as a Muslim in Iraq and my conversion to Christianity upon coming to the United States. I also mentioned my uncle, who was arrested for his faith and sent to an Iranian prison, and he is still in prison to this day. And a lot of times when I'm doing public speaking events, I get to mention a story about the second time I went back to Iraq. And real quick, if you missed my original testimony, I do have that description below. But I think this is really important to talk about. I think as a Christian, I'm genuinely skeptical of a lot of people who talk about miracles and a lot of people who talk about like these amazing signs and wonders that God has done, not because I don't believe that they can happen, but I get skeptical of it. I also don't think God really has to prove himself. And I think a lot of Christians tend to expect God to move in some miraculous way. And I think the message at the heart of the gospel is that God moves in the most unexpected of ways, and oftentimes not in the ways that we would want him to. And so when people talk about these amazing feats, I get skeptical, but sometimes that is a flaw on my part because I can skip over some of the marvelous things God has done and not highlight. And so I wanted to talk about one of those things that happened in my life. Around 2019, I went back to Iraq. After much prayer, I felt that I needed closure, and I really wanted to talk to my uncle again and tell him that Christians in the United States have heard his story, they're encouraged by his story, and they're really worried about him. Kind of reassured him and told him that a lot of people are praying for him, thinking. And I'll get a little more into his response later on in this video, but first I wanted to tell you about something that happened on the trip. So flying into Iraq, I flew into the northern part of Iraq where the Kurdish area is, and I just kind of started to go back down to my hometown. After my conversion, it is dangerous for me to move around my hometown. If some of the people saw me and knew it was me, it is a realistic expectation that life would be in danger. So I was very careful how I moved. I was very careful who I talked to. And this was in 2019 during the ISIS era. They were on the decline, but there were bounties out for Americans at this time, north of Iraq and central Iraq. And the part of Iraq I was from, southern Iraq, is where my clan is. And really, it was just a dangerous situation overall, but I still felt that I should go. Before I went, my mother-in-law's prayer group prayed over me, and it was really a good experience. So right before I get there, the leader of ISIS is assassinated by United States Special Forces in Syria, which was a really cool thing. He was a horrible man, and I felt already like some of the prayers were coming true. I felt that God was calling me to go back to Iraq to get some closure. So as I'm there, I go from hotel to hotel. And if you guys don't know about like the racial tension going on in Iraq, Iraqis just kind of slaughtered Kurds and Yazidis in northern Iraq. And there was a lot of distrust of Arabs in the north at that time, especially Arabs traveling from foreign countries, which is how a lot of ISIS fighters ended up in Iraq. They came from all over the world and ended up joining this terrorist organization. Coming to northern Iraq, I'm turned away from hotel after hotel. I go to like 3 or 4 hotels. Each time I'm told that I won't be allowed to stay. And it really was discouraging. About the 4th or 5th time, I end up going to this small little rinky-dink hotel owned by a guy and his wife. And upon getting there, I just fall immediately sick. If I even stood up or got out of bed, it would get to the point where I felt like throwing up. And this continued for days. Eventually, the innkeeper came in. His wife would bring me soup, and it was very different from a US hotel. And he just kind of said, "Hey, man, I think you should go to the hospital here in town. Not sure what they'll be able to do for you, but you only plan to stay for a night, and you've been here for like 3 nights, and I'm worried about you. I think you should get checked out." And this whole time, I'm kind of wondering, like, I felt a call from God to go to Iraq, and it wasn't going at all how I'd planned. I stopped in hotel after hotel, and then I fall sick, and I'm unable to travel at all. I'm starting to think that maybe God's punishing me. Maybe God wasn't really calling me to go back and to visit Iraq. Maybe it was just something I wanted to do selfish. So anyway, I go to the hospital. And almost immediately getting there, I start to feel better. And I stayed for a while because I thought, I've been sick for 3 or 4 days. This has to be just a passing thing. I'm going to stay. Check. And I'm sitting there, and I feel great. Like don't feel sick at all. And so I stand up, wait around. I waited there for about an hour, and then I exited the hospital. I flagged down a cab, go back to my hotel. And the innkeeper, as I'm coming in, he tells me I have to get out. The place is completely trashed. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? And he said, your God is with you. I said, what do you mean? He said, God is with you. Apparently, someone had heard me checking into the hotel in northern Iraq. And by my accent, they could tell I was either European or North American. And at the time, there were bounties on European and Americans' heads, up to 50,000, 100,000. This is something ISIS was doing. So I was told that ISIS had sent some people outside of the hotel, and they were just watching. They didn't want to come into the hotel and cause a scene or maybe get into a dangerous situation themselves. They were just going to wait outside of the hotel until I checked out and just nap me at that point. So at this time, I'm sick. I'm not getting out of bed. And these guys are waiting outside in shifts for 3 or 4. So eventually they say that they start to think that I got wise to what they were doing. I knew that they were out there and I wasn't going to come out. So they said they left and got a bunch of guys to come in and storm the hotel. But when they did that, I had already left and gone to the hospital. So during the small time frame that they were gone, I left. They weren't there. They came back and I was still at the hospital. They ransacked the hotel looking for me and I was nowhere. Really, that was completely amazing to me. I felt that was a miracle, and maybe not the strictest sense of the word, but God was definitely looking out for me. I ended up visiting my uncle in prison, who again was arrested for his faith, and I told him about how there were Americans who were praying for him and genuinely concerned. He was on their mind, and he told me to tell you guys a message. He wanted to let you know that the Iranian and Iraqi church are some of the fastest growing churches in the world. Actually, in the prison he is in, there was a revival. He began to separate prisoners and send them off to various prisons in Iran because of the revival that was breaking out in the prison he was in. Unfortunately, this had the opposite effect, and revivals started happening in all of these different prisons. And he found this out because a prison guard snuck him a letter. This prison guard had converted to Christianity, by the way, and he was being kept up to date by people he was formerly incarcerated with who were witnessing the Holy Spirit working. And so he told me to tell Christians in America that, and he told me to tell the Christians in America that the church is strongest when it's persecuted, and that he sees miracles, angels, all of these miracles and things that you see in the New Testament. He says that those are a common sight in church in Iran, which is just amazing to me. He's such an inspiration. That was his message, and that was the message from the persecuted church in Iran and Iraq. I found it to be really encouraging. He is one of my biggest role models, and I just wanted to share that with you. It's a really intimate piece of my life, but extremely powerful. I don't want to die with him. If you enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to subscribe and check out my content. Loads of stuff for you guys. Catch you next time.